This is a copy of KRYTYKA LITERACKA, which is the first magazine that ever published any of my poems. I'm 80 years old, and it was quite an honor to be published at my age. And the first poems that were published were translated from English into Polish. And then in a later edition, there was an English version of the same poems. The publisher, Tomasz Sobieraj, also offered to help me publish a book of my own poetry, which is called 5 Minutes to Midnight, which he helped me publish. Now I will read some of the poems that I published in that book. And let's see here. The Old White Dog. The old white dog with blue-green eyes collapsed on the floor near my desk and could not lift his head when I called his name. When he began to whine and cry, I telephoned the vet. The old white dog with blue-green eyes tried to walk but couldn't, so I carried him into the examination room and laid him on a cold steel table. The old white dog with blue-green eyes stared into the void and released his bladder, while the vet told me what was wrong, what was humane, and what had to be done. The old white dog with blue-green eyes watched me nod my head, giving my permission. I held his paw while the vet inserted the needle. He told me it would only take a few minutes. The old white dog with blue-green eyes died in a puddle of urine at the hands of a stranger, while I, his cowardly master, watched and wept. When it was over, I removed his collar and stumbled from the room. The old white dog with blue-green eyes still runs through the field of my dreams, but when I wake with a start in the night and stare into the darkness, he is not there. Echoes. It's a poem I wrote in the 80s when I lived in the Catskill Mountains of New York. Sometimes after supper on summer evenings, my wife would walk up the hill behind the house to feed the fish in our small green pond. She would stand on the pond's edge and throw chunks of bread to the silver trout that lurked in the shallow water. Her voice would carry across the pond, through the poplar trees, and down the hill into the valley. "Here, fish, fish, fish," she would call as she threw the tiny pieces of bread into the cool, dark water. I told her that I doubted if the fish could hear, let alone understand, but that never stopped her voice from calling out in the twilight and echoing in my ears. "Here, fish, fish, fish." Lampshade. Wrote this in the early 80s after a visit to the concentration camp Auschwitz in Poland. Skins of concentration camp prisoners made excellent lampshades. Tattooed skins appear to have been the most sought after. That sentence is from The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William Shirer. Lampshade. Behold the crude blue cryptonyms on swaths of pale, luminescent skin, sliced, peeled, and ripped from inner forearms, then tanned and stretched. Behold the initial flowers that blossomed in torsoed gardens, somewhere between the nipples and the navel, and cheated the nectar-sucking bee. Behold the anesthetized butterflies with extended patterned wings, caught in life's frenzied flight and impaled on death's invisible pin. Behold the benighted faces of the departed, staring from their final darkness into the eyes of admiring beholders, gawking behind visors of diminished glare. Behold the phantasmagoria of evil, displayed in all of its infamous glory on a lampshade. Fragments of childhood. There were juicy pears in the orchard of my grandparents, golden fruit that spattered the earth like rain, like snow, when my cousins and I shook the branches. The sky glittered above the trees, and the sun shimmered through the leaves while we laughed and played. Sometimes, after supper on summer evenings, we would sit on the porch and watch the fireflies blinking in the pasture. Grandpa would tell stories about working in the coal mines when he was young and before he got crippled by a cave-in. Grandma would sit in her rocking chair, sometimes knitting, sometimes churning butter, and sometimes just rocking back and forth, back and forth. When it got dark, Grandma would say, "Time for bed, boys." Climb the stairs to our pallets in the attic and kneel on the floor to say our prayers, with the moon and stars shining through the window. Wild things. Whenever I hear my neighbors rave and rant about their gardens and what and when they plan to plant, I always start to smirk and give a great big laugh when I think about all that work they're going to do just to harvest a veggie or two, while I, on the other hand, will be out in the woods, sprawled under a tree, taking life easy and living off the fat of the land. I never have to sow a seed, water plants, or pull a weed, not like they do. I pick wild leeks and mustard greens, dandelions, ferns, and stinging nettles, milkweed, mushrooms, and lily petals. And by the time they start their planting, I'm out in the woods doing my picking and getting all I want of wild things. It's not because I'm so smart that I don't have a garden, but I'm definitely not dumb because I don't need one. I've got a green thumb for wild things.